Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Escamilla, and I am the training coordinator for AVEVA Select California. I'd like to thank you for attending our Learn in 30 webinar today, focused on AVEVA Historian and Historian Retrieval Scenarios Made Simple. After the webinar this morning, we will be doing a short Q&A, so please feel free to type any questions or comments into the Q&A box or the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. Now I'd like to introduce your presenter for today's webinar, Elkansa Kousa. Elkansa is a product specialist here at AVEVA Select California. Good morning, Elkansa.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Kyle. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining. Um, Let me share my screen first. Please let me know, Kyle, when you can see it.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we're looking at the PowerPoint.
Perfect. All right, how about the audio? Are we good?
Yep, sound great.
Awesome. All right. So again, good morning, everyone. My name is Elkansa. I'm a product specialist with AVEVA Select California. I've been with the company for over 4 years and a half now. So today I'm going to be talking about the historian retrieval webinar, or we're going to be talking about the historian retrieval. I don't think we've done similar webinars before. We've probably talked about the historian or replicating from historian to, other products or other systems, and also using the historian client trend query, the other tools, but probably not about the retrievals in general. And, just to take a step back before we get into the retrieval modes and before we get into the retrieval options and we start working with the tools and the numbers and the examples, I want to take a step back and just talk to you a little bit about the purpose and the point of this webinar. We wanted to highlight the retrieval side of the historian because it is often misunderstood. The historian is often misunderstood as just being a storage device or a storage system. So one of the most impressive aspects of the Wonderware or the AVEVA Historian is its ability to store industrial data at incredible speeds and efficiency. Unlike traditional relational databases where they struggle under the weight of high-frequency plant data, the Historian is engineered specifically for time series information. It can capture hundreds of thousands of tags or hundreds of thousands of points per second, while applying advanced compression techniques, ensuring that the data is stored without overwhelming your system or your network. This means you don't just get the speed, but you also get optimized performance within minimal footprint and long-term scalability. However, this is a big however, the historian is often again misunderstood as just being a storage device or a storage system. But its real strength lies far beyond storing time series data. The true value of the historian comes from its powerful retrieval options, the ways it enables users to access and analyze and contextualize operational data. Unlike a generic database, again, that simply just logs values, the historian provides optimized queries and retrieval modes designed specifically for industrial data. So this flexibility, right, turns the historian into a decision-making engine rather than just a passive archive, where engineers can quickly, see performance trends, your operators can troubleshoot issues in real time, and business leaders can correlate production data with KPIs, etc. So in other words, storage is the foundation, but retrieval is the value. Having said that, we're going to jump into the webinar or the demo part of the webinar, and let me just go down in my slides here. So we've done the introduction about the AVEVA Historian, and I highlighted the purpose of today's webinar. But we're also going to talk about again the technical side of things. There's no way I can cover all the retrievals that AVEVA Historian offers in just 30 minutes. We do have workshops and we have trainings where we cover more of these, but I'm just going to talk about few of the, I would say, most common or interesting retrievals that the historian can offer, and I'm going to use the historian client trends to do that. So we're going to talk about the periodic numeric retrieval. We're going to use Excel add-in. I specifically chose this retrieval just so I could, it's a simple example to use the Excel add-in, and I know a lot of people are interested in that. And then we're going to talk about the round trip versus value state or and value state retrievals. We're going to use the query tool for that. We're also going to use the slice by, and I wanted to do that on the Historian client web, although it's also possible to do it on the query tool. And then we're going to go back and talk about the integral retrieval if we have time, and we're going to use the query again. So again, this is just a small example here on if you have, for example, like a 5,000 tags and you're storing those tags every second, how much do you generate and where do you store it and how does the historian do it? To the right side, all of those are the different retrieval modes and options. These are the historian client tools, trend, query, historian client web, and the Excel add-in. And we're going to utilize some of these, at least 3 of these today in this webinar or in the demo section of this webinar. Once we're done with all of the demo part, then we can look into the questions. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. All right. So I'm going to start by talking about the periodic numeric retrievals. So as it says, it returns calculated values, numeric aggregates for a tag over a defined time period. Instead of just pulling every raw sample, the historian summarizes the data for you, puts it into statistics such as minimums, maximum, standard deviation, count, etc. These results are returned for an interval you define, for example, hourly, daily, or so some of the use cases for this is if you want to create like daily production reports, right? So summarizing production counts, averages, or totals per shift or per day, for example. For KPI tracking, if you wanted to do monitoring for some equipment performance against thresholds, right? So for example, the compressors average efficiency of, I don't know, 85% this week or this month, right? So that type of calculation. So very quickly here, this is the Excel add-in tool, right? One of the historian client tools. This is the add-in in the ribbon here on the top to the right side. So the first thing you want to do is to search for the tag. You want to go and say tag search, for example, you look for the tags that you're interested in. You add these tags here in the cells in the Excel add-in itself. And then in my case, for example, I already added these 4 tags here, and I'm going to jump right away to the query. And I'm going to tell it, hey, I have this tag here, which is sitting in the 3rd cell here in the A column. And I'm going to upload that here and then say, I want to see the results in this cell right here. And then, for example, choose the time period or the time window. Let's just do that for like an hour or so, and then do next. And these are the values or the statistics that it can show me. And these are the details. I'm just going to leave everything as default, and I'm going to click finish here. And it provided me with this tags information or statistical information, minimum, maximum, average, etc. Right? So this is just one way, very simple query you can do on Excel add-in, and there are multiple other queries that you can also perform here on the Excel add-in. Just one thing to note here, I'm using the 64-bit. There's also a 32-bit Excel add-in that used to be used before. All right, so moving on to the next retrieval or the next scenario, I wanted to talk about the round trip retrieval and the value state retrievals. And I thought those were simple and interesting. Let me bring back my machine. And I want to minimize this. And yeah, there you go. So for this one, I'm going to be using the query tool. And just before we get into the query tool, I want to talk a little bit about the round trip retrieval. It's or at least like how to define it. It's very similar to value state retrieval. in the sense that they both perform calculations on state occurrences within a cycle period that you specify. However, the value state retrieval uses the time spent in a certain state for the calculations, and the round-trip retrieval uses the time between consecutive leading edges of the same state for the calculations. So in short, the value state is how long an equipment or process stayed in a specific state. This is good for utilization, compliance, downtime, runtime calculations, versus the round trip, which is how often that state reoccurred, or the time between the cycles, which is good for throughput, cycle time, operational cadence calculations. So if we are gonna use the query tool for this, the first thing I did here is to choose the type. I chose the history values, and then we started by, well, the first thing I wanted to do is to choose the retrieval first. So I jumped into the retrieval tab here, and I chose the round trip. Of course, I've chosen a tag. All of these tags are already historized in my historian. And I've had the system running since last night, so I should have some values here. And then the other thing that I want to mention is you could, as you can see here, so once you click on the tag, you could see the results immediately. So this tag, which is the heat exchanger 100.pv, has 3 different values or 3 different states, right? 1, 0, and null. These numbers that you're seeing right here, the state time represents the time the tag took to hit the state 1. So it hits the state 1 within the time window that I specified. And then how long after that it took for the tag to hit the state one more time, right? So this number here is in milliseconds. I go back here to the time and I decide, for example, how many hours or how many minutes. So if we do something a little bit smaller, like 5 minutes, you can see the number, it's smaller. Right, and we did not see the state null within those 5 minutes. If you go back to the retrieval, these are the retrieval modes, and this is the value state that I was talking about, right? So if I click on the value state, these numbers here represent how long did the tag stay in this state, which is 1 in this case, right? So this is how long it stayed, right? 44,979. And this is how long it stayed for this in the state of 0. And then again, if you flip to the round trip, you see the difference between the edges. I'm going to bring back the presentation just to explain this one more time with a graph. Let's see. Yeah, this is a nice graph here that explains the difference between the round trip and the value state. So the round trip is the difference between the edges, right? So we went from off to on, and then we went from off to on again, regardless to how long the tag stayed in the on position or the state or in the off state. The difference between the first time and the second time it went from 0 or from off to on, this is what we call a round trip, or this is the round trip calculation. Examples for when this is useful, or some use cases for either or the value state retrieval or for the round trip retrieval. For the value state, the dwell time in state, for example, in water and wastewater, measuring how many hours a pump was in the running state during a day, useful for runtime reporting and maintenance schedule. If you're in oil and gas, for example, summarizing like something like a compressor idle versus running time per shift to, understand equipment utilization and downtime. Versus the round trip retrieval, use cases, for example, let's say in pharmaceutical, calculating the interval between consecutive sterilization starts in a clean-in-place system, ensuring cleaning happens consistently every batch. Or, for example, measuring the time between consecutive like welding cycle start, for example, on some sort of like a robotic welder or something, right? So these are different examples for the 2 different types of the retrievals. So the round trip retrieval, one thing to mention here is that it only works on analog tags, discrete tags, and string tags. If no round trip state is found within the cycle for a supported tag, for example, a null state time value is returned here in this column right here. So this is about the round trip and the value state. And I want to move to the next retrieval type or the next retrieval scenario, which is the slice by. Slice by is an option, and you can use it with analog summary query. And it lets you retrieve summary statistics, for example, averages, minimum, maximum per batch, right? Or in a specific event. And we're gonna see that we're gonna demo it now in the Historian client web. Let me bring that up really quickly. So basically, in other words, it helps you slice your time window according to the boundaries of a batch defining event or state change, as I mentioned. So for example, if you're batch processing and another tag indicates which batch you're in, slice by can return metrics for each batch separately. So some use cases, for example, in let's say, chemical processing, where if you want to analyze pressure variations during, each phase of a recipe or a process stage, for example, like a reaction, a cool down, or a charge, you could do that by retrieving the per phase average readings for insights into your process stability. So that's just one example of when you could use this. A very, very simple example here that I'm doing. So I came to my Historian client web that I can access on a web browser. It points to my local host because this is where my historian is sitting. And as soon as I start searching for any keywords here, it will show me, the content or the tags that carry the same name or the same keywords. So what I did here is I just added a few tags, temperature, level. All of these are related to the same process. It's a mixer process. So temperature, level, and then the inlet and outlet valves. In order to utilize, so there are multiple different gallery options here, or multiple different graphs that you can plot. But in order to utilize the slice by, I need to go to the column chart. And in the column chart, as you can see here, it shows me the level and the temperature, right? And then you could choose what to show, what statistics to show. So averages, minimums, maximums, last and totals, and things like that. And then you can use per time, right? Per time window. So I just want to see the level and the temperature within this time window, right? Or you could also choose an event. And this is what we mean by slice by. So now this chart here is sliced by the outlet valve tag. So when the outlet valve tag is closed, this is the temperature, this is the level, right? When it's open in this specific time, these are the values for the level and for the temperature. And this is what we mean by slice by retrievals. Now you could do this retrieval type in the query also by editing, let's jump back to the query, by editing the SQL script here. You just add a where clause that tells you basically the tag that you want to slice by. So it's as simple as just adding one line here. For those of you guys who are not familiar with the query tool, you don't have to edit anything here. This is automatically generated. All you need to do is just to check the boxes that you're interested in. So what AVEVA did in the query tool is they created a GUI for your SQL. Instead of having you write the SQL code. So you just come here to this GUI and check all the boxes that you're interested in, whether it's in the columns that you want to see, the time format, time zones, things like, narrow or wide query formats. The retrieval types, there's also here more options, and then sources and orders. So instead of having to write the SQL code here, which can take a lot of time and it requires, some skills, not everyone is fluent in, writing SQL queries. You just use this GUI to create the query. So going back, you can use the slice by in the query tool also. The only difference is that in the query tool, you're going to have to do it one by one for the where clauses to add the tags versus for the For the historian client web, you could add all the tags that you're interested in slicing by, and then you just choose whatever you want to see, and immediately in a fraction of a second, you get the result here. So I changed from the outlet valve to the inlet valve. I'm slicing by the inlet valve tag now, and I'm seeing the results immediately. And you can add, if I'm not mistaken, I think someone said 10 tags here. I might be wrong, but I tried to, and they're working. All right. So this takes us to the last scenario that I have prepared here, which is the integral retrieval. And let me bring back the query. I'm going to talk about, I think I have a slide for that too. I'm going to talk about the integral retrieval, and we're going to touch a little bit on the average here because, well, the integral retrieval uses the average step also, the average retrieval step also. So it calculates the values at retrieval cycle boundaries by integrating the graph described by the points stored for the tag, right? So you have a tag and you have points stored for that tag, and you calculate the area under that curve. And then it also goes one step further and it scales the results for you. So therefore, it works much like the average retrieval, but additionally, it applies a scaling factor, right? So this retrieval mode is useful for calculating things like volume, for example, for a particular tag. So let's say, for example, if one of your tags represents product flow in gallons per second, the integral retrieval allows you to retrieve the total product flow in gallons during a certain time period. So it gives you the total volume. The integral retrieval is a true cyclic mode. It returns one row for each tag in the query for each cycle. And you get to decide the cycle, again, using the GUI if you're using the query tool. The integral retrieval only works with analog tags. So this is one thing to note here. For all other tags, the normal cyclic results are returned when you're using the integral retrieval. So calculating the values for your for the cycle in the integral retrieval is basically two steps. The first one, the historian calculates the area under the graph created by data points. This works the same as in the average retrieval, as we said. And then after that, or after the area has been found, it is scaled using the value of the integral divisor column in the engineering unit table, right? So this divisor expresses the conversion factor from the actual rate to 1 unit or to 1 of units per second. So for example, if the time weight average for a tag during a 1 minute cycle is 3.5 liters, and we're going to see an example like this now in the query tool. So let's say again, you have a 1 or 2 minute cycle, and the average is 3.5 liters per second. The integral retrieval returns a value of, let's say, 200 or something, 210 for that cycle for 3.5 liters per second multiplied by the 60 seconds. So I want to jump back to my machine. I apologize about jumping back and forth. But I'm going to go and open that query. And by the way, you can open multiple instances of the query tool too. And that's what I'm doing right here because I didn't want to spend, I only have 30 minutes. I didn't want to spend time setting up these queries. So I set them in advance. So I have 2 query instances open right here, as you can see. So again, I am using the history values query type, and I jumped into the retrieval tab right here, and I clicked on, I want to see the integral, in fact. And I want to see it for the last, let's say, 30 minutes. And the columns I've chosen here are just the tag name, basically, and it gives me the value and the start date time. So you get the tag name, the date time, the start date time, and the value. Sorry, not the tag name, but the other 4 columns, you get those by default, and then you choose whatever you want to add here. So if you want to add quality, for example, it pops up there. So again, we chose the time and we chose the retrieval. So this integral here, so this value that you're looking at right here is for temperature 1, which is an analog tag, right? This is the integral for the last, what did we say? We said 30 minutes. Let's just make that a minute for sake of simplicity. So this was the total. Well, I guess in temperature it doesn't make sense, but maybe in something like a level, right? So this is the level or the total level for in gallons for this tank in the last 1 minute. If you were to go back in the retrieval and click on average, this is the average level for tank number 1 in the last minute, right? Or within 1 minute. If you multiply that by 60, you get the integral, right? Because we only chose 1 minute, so it's a very simple calculation. You multiply that average by the 60, and then, which is basically the time period that I've chosen here, 60 seconds, and then you get the integral. And this is basically the difference between the integral and the average retrievals. And there are multiple retrievals here. And there's one thing that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of, which is the product documentation. All of these retrieval scenarios and a lot of examples are in the documentation online that is accessible to everyone. So let me just find that really quickly. I don't know, maybe I don't know if we can send that in the chat, Kyle. Docs AVEVA.
Which documentation were you referring to?
So I want to send just a link in the chat. And in that link, you can find all of these documentation and specifically the historian retrieval. Let me bring that very quickly. Historian retrievals. All right. So I'll bring that here very quickly. So these are the historian retrieval guides. And as I mentioned, you can see, and this has nothing, this doesn't specifically talk about the historian tools or the historian client tools, but this talks about the retrievals, right? Different retrieval options here. This is what we talked about right now. I don't know if we can paste that in the chat, Kyle. I'll send it to you in a chat. So let's see if we can put it in the.
All right, I'll give it a try.
Yeah, please. So if you could do that, that'd
Thank
be
you.
great. Sure. Other than that, we're actually done. I'm done with the content that I prepared for the webinar. I did not want to extend 30 minutes today. I'm trying to just stick to the 30 minutes that we booked. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask away. I don't think I have access to the chat. I don't know if you can help me with that, Kyle.
The chat, you should, but we do have a couple questions waiting. Oh, I guess it's about the same question. So there was a question that was asked, can I get the 64-bit version of the Excel add-in for V20 2020 version? And then they followed it up with maybe a better question is what version was the 64-bit version first offered? So like when was this, I assume when was this Excel add-in first
So
uh,
So that's a good question. The 64-bit, I don't know, is Maury or Mike here on in the call? Maybe you can help me. Was it the 2020, the 64-bit?
Scott, I can give you permission to speak if you're comfortable elaborating a bit more.
Sure.
Yeah, here.
Yep, I'm good. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can
Yes,
hear you,
we can.
Scott.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it just currently we're running 2020 and our add-in, it looks like when we do the install, there's only a 32-bit version available, and our IT department is hammering away at us to start using 64 where applicable.
Okay, that's interesting. I wanted to say that the 64 came out in the 2020, but let me try and confirm very quickly here in the technology matrix. So you guys are not on the 2020 R2, right? 2020.
We are actually on the 2020 R2.
Okay, I want to say that the 64 was definitely available for the 2020 R2.
Okay, well, maybe it's just an oversight on our part. I can reach out to our support and just double check. I wasn't sure if this was a new.
No, so actually, I think starting from the 2023, or is it the 2023 R2, it was only the 64-bit, and they only started supporting the 64-bit. So we are all moving to the 64-bit, and I'm sure it was there in the 2020 R2.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. All right. And then just real quick, I was able to turn the little document into a PDF,
Oh,
and I dropped it in the chat. Hopefully that is accessible.
nice.
All right. And then just getting into, we have a couple more questions here. How is the license recognized on the 2023 version on local client desktop in case we activated all the licenses at Historian server itself? Sorry.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to read the sentence better. How is the license recognized on the Wonderware 2023 version on local client desktop? And then they added a follow-up saying, in case we activated all the licenses at Historian server itself.
Okay, the question is not very clear, but I would say if you're asking on how the clients would grab the licenses, I mean, if let's say you have your historian and then all of the clients, everything is on the same network, and you put all of the you activated the historian client desktop pack. Let's say you have a pack, right, which comes with just one serial number on the historian server. All of the clients should be pointing at the server to get their licenses. You can only point a node at one location or at another node, basically, to grab its licenses. So if you don't have a licensed server, where you have activated all of your licenses and you activated the license on the historian server, or if the historian server is the license server, then you just point those local clients into the historian to grab their licenses. If let's say you have a pack, I have no idea about this situation, but let's say you have a pack of 5, right? And you're using maybe 6 or 7 different machines to grab those licenses. The license server, um, one part of its job basically is to manage these licenses. So it will give them on first come first serve basis. So the first 5 that ask for the licenses will be provided a license, and then whenever they're done with the session and they're logged out, the license is released back to the license server, and it could be utilized for another client. I hope that answers the question. I hope that was the question.
Uh, they submitted another follow-up that said yes, so I think that you were on the right track.
All right, perfect, perfect. And if you ever have any like doubt on how the licensing works and how to activate or any architecture questions, feel free to reach out to us or even to our tech support, if not to the technical team or to the sales guys, or to the account managers. Feel free to reach out to the tech support team. They'll help you out with this. Absolutely.
All right, and then I think we have time for this one last question. Does the historian provide guidance or built-in tools to help me pick the right retrieval method, or do I need to figure that out on my own?
Absolutely. So this documentation that I sent you guys gives multiple examples, real world examples with calculations, with numbers for each of these retrieval modes. And it also shows you how to do them in different tools. I have to admit the documentation have gotten much, much, much better. So in the last couple of years that they've uploaded all of the documentation online and it became much easier to update it, the documentation became much better. So the document that I sent you guys, and again, you can access the documentation on, was it AVEVA, docs.aveva.com, which is public. You can find all of this information and more. And of
Awesome.
course, you can always reach out to us if you're doubting anything. We have the technical resources that can help you find the right retrieval mode for the type of problem that you're trying to solve.
Awesome. All right, and it looks like there's no more questions as of now, but so I'd like to, well, thank you, Elkansa, and thank you everyone who attended. If you would like to view any portion of this webinar again, a recording will be available on our YouTube channel and our website, california.avevaselect.com. And once it is ready, you will also be receiving a copy of it via email. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for attending and wish you all a great day.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Awesome.
good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.